people are going to expect to see authenticated content, whether that is UGC content, music, podcasts, or whether that's advertisements. People do not trust what they see on the internet.
That's Marc Gray, CEO of SonicOrigin. From advancing AI audio to building verification tools, he's seen how trust is becoming a core feature in music and why the industry needs clear ways to confirm what's authentic, what's altered, and what's human-made.
That's something that we've been working on with some of the sort of governing bodies, inserting unique identifiers into part of the content that is the human-made content.
Today, Marc tells us why authenticity is quickly becoming a must-have feature in modern media and what it takes to prove what's real in an AI-saturated internet. By the end of this conversation, you'll learn how creators can document the human contribution inside AI-assisted work, why unique identifiers matter for protecting rights, and where AI tools can evolve to work with humans instead of replacing them. Stick around. I'm Bobby Owsinski, and this is the Inner Circle Podcast. What is the biggest problem today with AI copyright?
It's not copyrightable.
There we go. Yeah, right. But as a result, that's a big problem. Well, actually, it is if you use it partially. I'm thinking of music specifically. If you use it in conjunction with somebody human, then you can copyright at least some of it. But there's the problem where there's no direction on how much human interaction is possible before it becomes copyrightable.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. That's something that we've been working on with some of the sort of governing bodies on inserting unique identifiers into part of the content that is the human-made content. Then that gives you the ability to register that element or stem, for example, with the US Copyright Office. And you're absolutely right. They've been incredibly vague about what would constitute human-made or AI-made.
Well, okay, so your company, SonicOrigin, has a solution for this, right?
Absolutely, yeah. So I'll give you the basic elevator pitch, if you like. You'll have to excuse me. I've just come off of a sales call, so I'm going to try not to make it too salesy.
Well, that's okay. We enjoy the sales part too.
Okay. So we have created the most resilient watermarking technology ever created. It enables us to insert variable payloads across the entire audio stream every 2.1 seconds. But this also means that it survives pitch changes, speed adjustments, stem separations. So your kind of typical TikTok kind of, as we would call it, the TikTok thing, where people speed up, and they'll strip out the vocals and they'll put it on their favorite cat video, that typically doesn't get picked up by a lot of the kind of content recognition systems.
Does this have to be inserted upon creation of the content then, right?
Ideally, yes, it would be created at the mastering stage. So before content ever sees the wild, it's carrying that watermark, and that then travels with that as like a metadata passport, forever. But with a lot of the new regulations that are coming down, whether that's the California, the SB 942 or AB 853, where most things that have an AI component are going to be required to carry a watermark, then I think you're going to see a lot of the DSPs kind of either re-uploading what they have or watermarking at source what they are currently carrying.
So for music, then, ideally, this would be the domain of the mastering engineer rather than the producer who's producing the content.
Yeah, I think the music industry in particular has always been very, very wary of watermarks. Right, especially in the form of signal injection technology. And, so I think whilst artists and labels get used to the concept of having something inserted into, what is their pride and joy, it's best handled by the mastering engineer. We work very closely. One of our sort of very close friends, Brian Malouf, I know you've had Brian on your show before. We also work very closely with Kevin Reeves over at UMG. And so the main thing is that, they have been the ones that have done the inaudibility testing, because we know that the minute one artist hears one artifact, then you've lost all credibility.
I can remember going back to the 90s when DVD audio discs first came out, DVD audio and SACD. And that was the first time audio watermarking was really introduced, or they tried to introduce it. And there was a lot of different ones that were out there. And I remember participating in some of the listening tests back then. And it's funny because you couldn't hear it until you could hear it. And then you can identify it every single time. And that's kind of the way this works. So if there's something identifiable in there, especially someone who has acute hearing, they're going to hear it. They're going to hear through it. So you know this. You've gone through this.
Yeah, I mean, if you go back to a long time ago, watermarks were hidden in the inaudible range, right? And then we converted them to MP3. You then compress the file and you immediately then lost that. So it was then people trying to put signals in the audible range. And that's kind of where you then had a problem. Now we do this, our signal is within the audible range. It's just our secret sauce is kind of how we do it.
So you call it signal injection technology and not watermarking. So what would be the difference?
There would be no difference. The RIAA call it signal injection technology. But if you're trying to talk to people about what it is you do, it cuts out a lot of the of the noise if you just say watermarking. But then you have to go back and explain that it's not like traditional watermarking, and also that it's completely different to fingerprinting.
So this will survive file manipulation, as you said, slowing down, speeding up, track separation, things like that. But how does it work over multiple generations? Copy of a copy of a copy of a copy. And I know in digital that's not supposed to matter, but yet sometimes it does, especially if it's going back and forth between formats.
So because of the way we insert the code and the fact that it binds to the underlying audio, it becomes part of the audio. Like an AI algorithm to see it and separate it, it becomes part of the audio. So in the same way that a derivative or a copy would copy over the drum solo, the drums or the audio, it just copies it over unwittingly.
One of the things and the reason why I bring that up is I didn't know this until recently, but a lot of the large language models are learning from pirated content. So they go to pirated sites and then they claim, okay, we don't have to pay for this since it's from a pirate site, which is a dubious remark, but nonetheless, that's what they say. Again, it seems like what you're talking about is going to survive any type of problem there. Pirated site. And again, I'm thinking mostly you're going from one file format to another.
Yeah.
Which is usually when there's problems that arise.
Yeah, absolutely. If you look at the new California laws, which hopefully will continue, it puts the onus on the social media platforms and the DSPs that they cannot strip metadata. But I think you're absolutely right.
Hey, quick pause. Have you ever felt like your mixes are close, but just not quite to the level that you hear from the pros? The truth is, even with today's powerful home studios, it's the techniques that make all the difference. The Mixing Engineer's Handbook, now in its 6th edition, walks you through these techniques step by step, from EQ and compression to immersive audio and the latest plugins. You'll also hear directly from some of the world's top mixers through exclusive interviews and bonus content. If you want your mixes to sound polished and professional no matter what setup you're working on, scan the QR code on screen or click the link in the show notes. Now, back to the conversation. Okay, so this is not in the metadata, right? This is in the audio signal itself.
Yeah, but because we are able to insert multiple payloads across various parts of the audio, we paint the audio completely. So whatever you do to it, you cannot escape the underlying code. But also the added benefit to that is, depending on the use case, is that we can make the metadata the code as well. So the metadata can either travel with the music, or the unique identifier can be a signpost to a distributed ledger that has far more metadata. One lot of metadata that is for the consumer to see how a piece of content was made, what tools were used, but then other identifiers within the same content point to a distributed ledger that have all of the private information that the record labels want, that they don't necessarily want for public consumption.
Is that what you mean when you say multiple payloads?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So now this sounds all well and good, but the problem is you have to get buy-in from the industry. It's easy to get buy-in from one or two companies, but it has to be cross-industry, and that's always the finicky part.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and we're making huge strides in that arena due to sort of legal constraints I can't really discuss anymore at this time. But yes, you're absolutely right. It only works if there are maybe one or two watermarks. It's never going to work if people are looking for 85 different watermarks on a piece of content. We believe that we have the absolute upper hand on everyone because of the fact that we have them. It's the most deployable. It's the most scalable. I mean, we can do millions and millions and millions of instances in an hour. And we've got the buy-in from the people that other people listen to, the likes of Brian Malouf, the likes of Kevin Reeves and Pat Krause.
Tell me about your background.
I was involved in multiple businesses. I invested in Sonic several years ago as a kind of founder investor. And then I found myself last year at a time when I could give far more time to Sonic, and the kind of stars aligned where watermarking wasn't very sexy before. All of a sudden, people wanted to stamp provenance and authentication across their content. So it's become the forefront of what everybody's trying to do.
When Sonic was first created, was it with watermarking in mind? Or is this a pivot?
No, it was very much with watermark. It was very much born as a kind of R&D research project where some people who were kind of from the industry wanted to look at ways of protecting their content. But then you got hit at that point with the whole piracy is not an issue anymore. Nobody cares. And, and like I say, bad for some people, great for us from the point of view that we're now able to kind of push our technology to the forefront, protect artists, protect rights owners, and also give consumers the ability to see what it is that they are, watching and listening to. Because let's be honest, nobody trusts what they see on the internet anymore.
Is this deployable across different types of content? I'm thinking images and video.
One thing we don't do is images.
Okay.
There are already thousands of people in that game. It is incredibly easy to fool your eyes. To fool the auditory system is far, far harder. I see value if something's real or not, but the likes of Getty Images and whatnot, they've kind of pretty much got that covered,
Okay, that's for images, but how about video?
So the way that we deploy our technology, every frame video is tied to the audio stream. We cryptographically hash it so we know if it's been altered. And then, like I say, we tie that to a decentralized ledger.
I think the commercial aspect of this is, yes, let's stop piracy. But the other aspect is let's be able to identify a deepfake. So the question would be then, would this technology be widespread available?
Yeah, 100%. I think once we have the buy-in from the majors, across advertising, podcasts, we're already making huge developments there. Music's always harder because nobody cares about their back catalogue of adverts, right?
Yeah.
You always get the people that say, yeah, but what about my uncle's CD collection? How are you going to stop him from playing it?
Yeah. Here's the question. Can you watermark the watermark?
Well, we can, no one else can. So our encoding and decoding process are completely decoupled. So you don't need one for the other, but, it's a deterministic technology, right? The code's either in there or it isn't. Whereas if you look at fingerprinting, it's kind of saying, oh, we think we've seen something like that before. And it's talking to, a cross-reference in the cloud that is very expensive. And like I say, it's probabilistic. And don't get me started on attribution models for AI outputs.
Well, again, what I'm thinking of is you have a song already watermarked, and you have someone nefarious who doesn't try to strip the watermark, but tries to put another one on top.
Yeah, so that wouldn't work because ultimately, I mean, they certainly couldn't put it on via ours because everything gets registered with our key store, if you like. So we would know exactly what it is. I couldn't stop them trying to put a watermark over the top of some open source rubbish.
Yes, but I think the problem there is, what if they get hold of your technology? How widespread would the technology be? Or keep it out of the hands of people like that?
Yeah, no, it's controlled by us, but you're able to deploy it yourself, if that makes sense.
Would this make any sense to go a level down from mastering to the production end of it? And I'm thinking mostly in a digital audio workstation.
Yeah, again, that's something we've looked at, especially when it comes to adding unique identifiers for what is AI, what is human. Absolutely.
Yeah, that would be a big seller, I think.
Yeah.
What don't people know about what you do that you wish they did?
I think, personally, we want people to know that it's not going to ruin their life's work. There is a huge difference between fingerprinting and watermarking. And the way that the world is going, people are going to expect to see authenticated content, whether that is UGC content, music, podcasts, or whether that's advertisements. People do not trust what they see on the internet, whether that's fake news or whether that's someone trying to sell them something on Shopify. So I think we are heading to a world where people are going to veer towards authenticated, verified content.
There's a big appetite for that, obviously, and it's getting bigger every day. What is holding the adoption of the technology back?
It's moving ahead. I'm the co-chair of the audio task force of the C2PA, which is the Coalition for Provenance and Authenticity. And that's very much driven by, Adobe, Google, Microsoft, and many others, because I think everybody recognizes that if the internet just becomes this complete no trust, platform, then no one really wins. I think you can certainly see a world where people choose to put a filter on their feeds. I think TikTok has actually introduced something quite similar recently where people can actually filter, AI and non-AI.
Yeah, I know. It's one of those things where I think people don't care about the content until they do. And there's been a fair amount of studies that say that, you can't tell between fake and real, but as soon as you can tell the difference, then you're very aware of the differences, and it makes difference in your selection from there on.
I mean, I don't know what your view is on AI derived content. I don't think we are seeing anywhere near the impact that people have said. They make up between 0.5 and 1% of streams. I think they're great for novelty factor and memes. My little girl is obsessed with Taylor Swift because she's obsessed with Taylor Swift.
Yeah.
Right. I personally think the big market is going to be in AI tools that work with human beings. But yes, I think for elevator music, I think for meditation music, and it's probably going to give the DSPs a whole raft of content they no longer have to pay for. But I'm not seeing the engagement.
It's funny because I believed for a long time that the first thing that AI, and talking about music now, the first thing that AI would take out commercially would be catalogs, music catalogs for advertising, for, film, background music, whatever. And yet I talk to the people that develop those catalogs and they say that the appetite for real music is greater than ever. And they haven't seen it affect them at all.
I've got a couple of friends that are voice actors in Hollywood, and I think it's really affected them from, kind of radio voiceover stuff and things like that, where, if you're listening to it, it's an advertisement for the local mattress company, right? I think they're really suffering from this because, of numerous companies. But I think you're absolutely right. I think things of value, I think we want to see real things, but I think it's very much personal. It's your personal thing. A friend was telling me, who deals with kind of consumer behavior, that in music now, people are engaging with the person before they've even listened to their music. That, it's actually the opposite. They're not hearing something on the radio and then deciding if they like the person. That it's what that person represents or things like that then kind of drive them to their music. So I don't know. I'm not buying into it. I'm really not.
Someone sent me a list of the 6 biggest AI artists recently, and I decided I was going to listen in depth to each one of them. I was surprised how and they were in different genres, and I was surprised about the sameness of everything. There was nothing unique. There was nothing that made it stand out. It was well done for sure, but there was nothing special. It was boring. So therein lies the secret, to human content generation.
But it's the person behind it that we buy into, isn't it? Long before Taylor Swift was the megastar that she is now, it always used to be, what boyfriend is she writing a song about? And that's how I remembered hearing about her. I had friends who invested in hologram companies a long time ago. You have the ABBA Voyager, don't you? But that's fundamentally based upon human interaction that people have had with them, whether it's via their music or movies or whatever.
I'd never heard anything negative about that, actually.
No, because it's based upon a human band.
Yeah. No, everybody that I talked to or read about said they loved it. So, but again, it's not AI. That was something completely different. So it's just not what they are today.
No, I think what it is that you get people saying, oh, well, it won't matter that you can't see an AI artist in concert because there will be a hologram. Right. And my argument to that is, look at ABBA, they'll say. And my argument to that is, well, ABBA, you're already an ABBA fan, right? It's not the same.
What's the biggest challenge in music today?
I think there's a lot of snake oil salesmen. Okay, you can take it on face value. You can take it from the people that I work with that you also know that there's a level of credibility there. I think it suits a lot of people in the industry as a whole for it to be kind of broken, right? You've got these mini industries within mini industries within mini industries. So I think that's what you always fight against. Sometimes you just got to stop reading things, haven't you? I mean, if sometimes I'll see this absolutely kind of nonsense article that comes up where someone's made this claim. I mean, for me, the biggest one is AI attribution, right? Okay. So the thought that you are able to analyze an output from a data set of 10 million songs and say, oh, that's 2% Kenny Rogers and 5% Dolly Parton is probabilistic nonsense. Even if it wasn't, it won't stand up in court and you will end up still with a musicologist anyway. Let's not forget the most fundamental thing in that, let's say one of the major ones, I won't mention their name, says they can do 5 million songs a day. You're telling me that someone is going to use an AI algorithm to forensically analyze 5 million songs, right, for their fractional attribution, okay, despite the fact that 99.99999% of them are worthless, and the ones that do make it to number one on Spotify, you can't copyright.
Yeah, you're right. But it's the same way for musicians. I mean, how do you learn? You learn by your influences and you copy your influences. And how much? Who's to say?
Yeah, but I think anyone that thinks that the licensing models are going to go on this fractional attribution thing, it's just nonsense. It really is.
You've obviously been involved in numerous businesses. I'm sure it has its own challenges. But what is the best piece of advice that maybe somebody imparted to you, or maybe you learned yourself along the way?
They said, don't get involved in music. And like, a typical bull in a china shop, I was like, nah, you don't know what you're talking about. Nothing's as bad as the industries I've been in. And I can categorically say that it's just as bad as everybody says. So, yeah, don't do it.
All right. So how can someone find SonicOrigin?
So our website is SonicOrigin.com. We'll be doing a huge amount of public announcements around January, February, but also our aim is to make it really available to kind of up and coming artists so that they can protect their content at source.
Do you have a price point?
Not that I'd want to say publicly.
Okay. Yeah.
I get shot by my board.
It's all right. We'll be looking for it.
Ultimately, we will price it at the point that it's a no-brainer. Right, that someone is going to look at the benefits of protecting their stems, the constituent parts of their piece of content, not to mention that it makes monitoring more cost effective. So I think it'd be at that price point where it's a no-brainer for the value you get.
Okay, I have another question and just brought something up here. Is there a dashboard that I can see how it's deployed?
So And that's something that we are kind of working on at the moment, because there are lots and lots of monitoring companies, right? And they're all listening and trawling the internet, and they're using fingerprint technology. It's incredibly expensive. So for us, we're currently working on creating those partnerships where those people that are already trawling the internet, looking for things, can actually listen out for our code, just on a different level cost wise, because you're not constantly trying to compare data sets with a data set in the cloud.
Thanks for listening and being in my inner circle. Remember, if you have any questions or comments, you can send them to questions@bobbyowsinski.com. You can also learn all about the latest in music, audio, and production news, and find out about openings for my latest online classes at bobbyowsinski.com. This is Bobby Owsinski. I will see you next time.